Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, a returning guest. I honestly forget what was going on the last time we had him on, but I'm sure it had something to do with both of our teams being shitty. And now here we are at some point in time in the future when our teams are shitty again. Although hoping to get less shitty, although I think his team might be in a better position than ours. We'll see. We'll get into it. He covers the Sacramento Kings in many formats. Kings Pulse of Blue Wire Podcast, Family Fame, and also Kings Herald and SacB News. Brenden Nunes, what's going on, man?
Not too much, John. I'm happy to be back on the show and talking to you, man. I got to say, if you genuinely think you're in a worse position than the Kings, you're in a pretty tough spot right now. There's not many organizations that could say that for the last decade and a half.
Oh, well, no, we don't even need to go last decade and a half. I mean, for us, it's 20 years. For you guys, get to at least have the Bibby, Weber, Page, who am I forgetting? Doug Christie, Hedo,
Vlade.
Yeah. How could I forget Vlade? Yeah, that's a little bit closer in the rearview mirror than the 90s. Van Gundy years were for us, although we had the mellow interlude. So
yeah, you're in the playoffs.
Last season, yelling at me.
First of all, to Brendan's point, the Bibby, Weber, Doug Christie Game 6 allegedly being turned by officials series was exactly 20 years ago. So it's literally been 20 years since that. That was 2002.
But that team stayed together for a little bit longer after that, right?
Brenden, what do Kings fans look at as the last time you guys were quote unquote relevant?
Yeah, that team. Yeah.
Okay. And Melo won 54 games and was the 2 seed in 2012. So
he's Melo's publicist. He gets paid.
Respect on his name. This 20 years of agony that Knicks fans whine about. There was one year where they were 5-1 against the two teams that made the finals that year. I'll let you guys continue with your podcast.
The Kings would kill for a year like that.
and look, we had another year a couple of years ago in the 2020-21 season, which was a lot of fun. But then again, in fairness, and that's actually what I was like, oh, hold on, I want to check something before we start recording. 2 years ago, you guys were like kind of on the come up too. 31 and
39 wins.
Oh, well, that's three. So 3 years ago was the 39 win team. And that was when De'Aaron Fox was like, okay, when is De'Aaron Fox making his first? And not if, but when is De'Aaron Fox making his first All-NBA team? And then followed that up with, it was 31 and 41, and then last season, right?
Yeah, that's not the trajectory that you want to go down, but
not ideally.
Hopefully it turns around here.
But you got the 4th pick in the draft, so how excited are Kings fans?
Has to be. I mean, excited. It's a lot better than the situation that we're going to probably end up with 7 or 8. It is pretty funny that it gets labeled a 3-man draft and they end up at 4. But it's hard to complain when you jump in the lottery, right? I think they're in an interesting situation though. Like, to me, Ivy's the guy, and there's only so many opportunities an organization like the Sacramento Kings have to get a star. And it's never through free agency. It's just always through the draft. Whether that be you draft well like Tyrese Haliburton and then you go trade it for a star like Domantas Sabonis, or you just select a star. And when I think you're sitting at the top there, you have a rare chance to acquire somebody with that sort of upside. You kind of get it. You kind of got to swing for it in my mind. So I think it's a good jump. Again, I think it's a 3-man draft, so it leaves them in a little bit of a funny situation, but Ivy still has that upside to me.
So I remember distinctly the recording. Actually, maybe Andrew could jump in and help me out again. Andrew, you were producing when we did when the RJ lottery happened, right?
No, I wasn't.
You weren't on board yet?
No.
What were you waiting for, man?
I needed some other shows to go away, John. That is what happened.
Well, so then I remember recording a podcast late that night after we had a watch party for the draft. And my tone that night was like, look, he's not Zion, and he probably isn't Ja. I think we even had a sense of that back then. But I think there was as big a fall off, or perhaps a bigger fall off, between RJ at 3 and the rest of this draft fast forward now, I mean, Garland went 5th and DeAndre Hunter went 4th. We'll see what happens with him. Then there was the gap between, 2 and 3. I don't know if history is going to prove me right, but I definitely remember being like, okay, maybe we can't be like ecstatic, but we should be really happy. I feel like, are you guys kind of in that position now?
Absolutely. It feels greedy to complain after jumping, pretty much, I think is where it's at. And they're in a better position than they were at the beginning of the lottery. So it's undeniably a win, but for sure, right when I saw they jumped, I've been dreaming of Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith Jr., 2 people who I think are just phenomenal fits alongside Sabonis.
Okay.
So I was just thinking anything to get one of those 2 guys. And I don't think that happens at 4 for the Kings. So I think it's similar. Yeah.
I saw, I think you tweeted something earlier today about, I'm not buying the Ivy going in the top 3.
Yeah. Not seeing it. All of a sudden this comes out of nowhere. I don't believe anything this time of year. I refuse.
Good. It's funny. I'm going back and reading old stuff from before previous drafts. And I was revisiting the Knicks are hot on Colin Sexton, the trade trail for Colin Sexton a year ago. Yeah. And now fast forward 1 year, it's like the Knicks are not expected to be a suitor for Colin Sexton. Oh, you don't say. Crazy how things can change. All right. So there's a lot of things I want to hit with you because it feels like these 2 teams oftentimes are linked for various reasons. One, because they've both been largely bad for a very long time, as we just both alluded to. But also because I don't know, you got the Perry thing. You have I don't know. I think of Fox. I think of Kentucky. I think there's always those rumors out there. So lots of stuff we get hit with. I actually want to start because you just brought it up, the Haliburton trade. I haven't got a chance to talk to anybody who covers the Kings since that trade happened. I just want to get that out of the way first. What was your impression of that when it occurred, and has that changed at all since then?
Yeah, I think Haliburton said in his Tribune piece that if you would have asked everybody in the room who's most likely to still be here at the end of the day, that everybody said him. And I absolutely would have been one of those people. I just didn't see a world where Haliburton was moved on from. I was prepared for anything down to De'Aaron Fox potentially being moved, and wasn't prepared for Tyrese Haliburton. So it's definitely a little bit of shock when that trade initially goes through. And it was also my first year being credentialed and being around all the guys.
Sure.
So to actually experience we were talking to Tyrese yesterday and then just never see him again and experience that for the first time myself was pretty crazy. And Tyrese is the life of any room that he's in. He's the most vocal guy at practices. He's the one on aux. He's the life of the room. And they were talking about wanting the culture to be Tyrese Haliburton's personality, right before this. So it was a shock. But Sabonis came in and clicked right away. I think Fox and Tyrese would have worked, but that worked right away. And while everybody's sad that Tyrese was moved on from with just not only his play, but his personality and the team control with the contract and all that, it's hard to just overlook Domantas Sabonis, though, 25 years old and his resume. So mixed emotions, but in the end, it was only 15 games. He came out hot and just clearly unlocked De'Aaron Fox.
So as Andrew could tell you, I'm a big Sabonis guy. I'm old enough to remember when there were debates about which of Domantas Sabonis or Julius Randle was in the lead for the an all-star spot in 2021. And then Randle kind of went on to have the rest of the year that he had. And then he had the last season that he had. Not a candidate to be traded for Tyrese Haliburton, as it were. But that's neither here nor there. So, and I love Sabonis. And at the same time, I'll admit that I was pretty critical of the trade purely because of the things you just mentioned about Haliburton. He seemed like the ideal, rebuilding block. Maybe not your best player on a championship team, maybe not your second best player on a championship team, but one of those core foundational pieces. And to me, the trade signaled okay, the Kings are going for it, but are Fox and Sabonis enough to go for it? But then now here you get this pick, the 4th pick. So I almost wonder, does getting a little lucky in the lottery make it, in your mind, more likely that this will work, or were you hopeful even before you guys moved up?
Yeah, I think it makes it more likely, but I think it was always known that there needed to be one more move.
Okay.
Richaun Holmes sitting there is kind of the obvious one. And he has some off-court things that just got out there.
We've been following that
as well
over here. Yeah.
So there's that. I think when it comes to his on-court production that you saw this year, there's a lot of outliers. Like the eye injuries that he dealt with twice throughout the year are just total freak accidents. There's nothing to be concerned about. Because of that, actually, he wasn't able to stay in great shape. I guess he wasn't allowed to move around all that much when he dealt with one of his eye injuries. So, and every time he went out, he had COVID at one point this year. He took some personal time, which come to find out has to do with the off-court things that have been going on, obviously. So it's just a weird year for him that I think that when you're talking about him as a player, the years prior where he's top of the league in field goal percentage, one of the best pick and roll men in the league. I think that there is value in Richaun Holmes. I think he was the obvious piece and still needed to be moved. And then I think that more likely than not, the expectation was that this pick got traded. So when it jumps,
if it didn't move up or
if it would have stayed. Yeah. Okay, I think even before, like when the Sabonis trade happened, it was expected there needed to be one more thing. And the most likely asset was probably next year's first. So it moving up, I think actually weirdly changes the conversation more into like debating keeping it. But it's also obviously a more valuable asset. So I think there always needed to be one more move, but obviously this makes it easier.
Yeah, for sure. I think like I was just spitballing in my own mind as I tend to do about like what if I was the Knicks, like what would I potentially give up for the fourth pick in the draft, which leads into a conversation of like, what do the Kings want that the Knicks have? And that's where the conversation becomes very short. Let's move over to Randle because he's there. He's a basketball player.
Yes.
Plays for the Knicks. Andrew, God love Andrew's soul. He likes to reference. You can chime in here, Andrew, and tell me if I say any lies. Okay. Andrew likes to reference a radio spot that made the rounds from Kings, some radio station over there. I guess their main radio station, in which the guy before the deadline was talking about like, yeah, sure, Julius Randle, why not? Like I'd give up Fox for him. I was just, Andrew, did I get that?
So, I mean, I'm sure you'd be able to tell us a little clearer if there is like a main AM or FM talk radio show that people listen to, or people people without the internet listen to, you know?
Yeah, it probably was KHTK who, has a deal with the Kings and everything.
Okay.
I'm loyal to a different radio station, so I feel bad for saying this, but
okay. Listen,
you should not feel bad.
We don't endorse any of them. We endorse Blue Wire and that's it. But basically the week that, or like honestly, the day that we thought that maybe there was a world that the Kings and Knicks could be trade partners. In fact, John, I don't think you know this. Oh no, wait, John was told this, but I tell John a lot, so he probably forgot this. Brenden and I had talked about potentially doing a pod when that rumor dropped.
I remember
we were saying if there's smoke here, let's see if it turns into some type of embers.
And it did not.
Julius had a press conference, and then you guys traded Tyrese Haliburton. So there was, nothing to come of it. But basically the radio interview or the reaction to the report from that radio show was them talking about Julius Randle in a way that made us say, oh, the other, they don't know. Like nobody.
Yeah. And my response to that has always been like, I'm not going to do the thing that Knicks fans always get mad when other people who follow other teams do. It's like, oh, it's the Knicks. They'll do the stupid fucking thing. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's the Kings. They'll do the stupid
all the time, John.
Yeah, it sucks. It's annoying. And like, you guys have scouts. Like I know Vivek Ranadiva is
the lead scout.
What's that?
The lead scout for the Kings.
Okay, so maybe he's a little bit more. Maybe he has a little Dolan mid 2000s vibes going on there. But I still have to think like they watch the same basketball that the other 29 teams watch, and like Julius Randle was very bad this year. He's very counterproductive to winning. And while he still has talent and he still does things that if you like squint and you like imagine him in a certain role and the whole thing. Yeah, there's a world where he could go back to becoming a really productive player, even if he doesn't get the jump shot completely back. I'm just more wondering, like, do Kings fans do they care about Julius Randle? Is he like on the radar at all? Where are you guys at with him?
After Sabonis is acquired, I don't see how it works. I guess you have two playmaking bigs, run some horns and try to work through those guys. There's not enough shooting. That's really what it comes down to. Fox and Sabonis, I think there's a lot of ideal skill sets that you get around them. I think the one non-negotiable is that it can't be like a question mark shooter. They don't have to be great. They just have to not be bad shooters.
You don't like 30% from deep this year? That's not.
I don't love it. You don't love it? No. And I'm sure everyone will point to the 41% from last year. I feel okay calling that an outlier.
How dare you, sir?
I know. Sorry to come on your pod and do this.
It's only something I've repeated on this pod. How many games were there this year? 82 times.
Yeah. So I don't know. And the Fox thing, people were really writing that like, it's just time to move on from everything. And Fox has been here a long time. We just need a reset. Trade away Barnes, trade away Fox. Buddy is already gone. Bagley's already gone. Let's just reset this entire thing. And I think just started looking for matching salaries for De'Aaron Fox.
It's fair.
So I think that, there was something that to be said. Like, I think they probably tried to move on from Fox before Haliburton. I would try to trade Fox for Sabonis before I trade Haliburton for Sabonis, to be honest. I think that Haliburton obviously has more team control. I think it's an easier fit. I really like Haliburton. I think last time we were on here, we were talking about Haliburton a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And about his like questionable ceiling because he needed to play off of somebody else. There was so much growth in year 2 to his self-creation that I don't even know what his ceiling is. Like, if I have to bet, I'm guessing that he's an all-star rather than
I was about to say, like, I don't know what we get in trouble on here for attempting to be even keeled at times about RJ Barrett. I think RJ has a higher ceiling than Haliburton. And I'm not just saying that because it's a Knicks podcast, because I ask anybody, I'm hard on RJ, but I think there was, I think if you like asked 20 NBA, like front office evaluators, I'm sure you get a variety of opinions between like which of those two guys that they would take.
Yeah. And, I think that it's easy to forget what De'Aaron Fox did. Like 25-7 at, I think it's 23 years old. Like, he was really, really good. And he was a little checked out at the beginning of last season. He was first one to tell media that he didn't have a good year. He had a good stretch where he played phenomenally. And that's after Sabonis was acquired. Coincidentally, I'm sure. I also think he was really frustrated at the beginning of the year that Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley were still on the team. Like, everybody expected those guys to be moved on from. Those guys wanted to be moved on from. And I think there was a frustration of, okay, it's all about this season and we have two guys that don't want to be here. What are we doing? So I think that he just hasn't played. In my mind, he still hasn't played his best basketball.
I mean, again, I remember, God, if I told you the text conversation, and Andrew's on these, that we've had about De'Aaron Fox and what Bernard would give up for him. Like, we're generally, I think, fans of his over here. Like, around the deadline, like I think I went back and watched like 15 games worth of his shooting possessions or something. And it's like, I didn't know what I was going to find because I don't get a chance to watch that much Kings. And you watch the tape and it's like, this guy hasn't dropped off. Like, I'm sure, like you said, there's effort issues and maybe like there's the occasional shot that like, that's probably not the best shot that he could be taking there, but like the ability's there, still. So I don't know. I mean, like, we'll maybe have another conversation about what the ceiling of this team is after they make the pick, whether they keep the pick, the whole thing. But I'm here for like all the Fox love. I guess I'm wondering like where's the trade? And that's the only reason I brought up Randle, because like, again, I know you're smart. Like, that Julius Randle is probably not the answer. I don't expect the Kings to think he's the answer, but report comes out today, like they're looking to trade, or not looking to trade for, but like there have been reports about like they would whatever, see what else is out there. And I guess I just don't know, like, is there a trade that you've thought of for like a quote unquote win now type of piece, or are you're full on like make the pick and take the guy who could be the superstar potentially?
The one that stands out is John Collins.
Really?
Yeah.
Not the name I expected to hear come out. Okay, tell me more.
I don't think, John Collins has been linked to the Kings a lot. He, it's talked about that he's unhappy in Atlanta, left and right, it feels like. And those front offices have made trades between each other before, a couple times over, I want to say. I think that he's the ideal four next to Sabonis. You get really good shooting. There's a lot of growth that he's made as a defender that's sold me even more on it over the past season. He's locked up for a substantial amount of time. I want to say he's just starting that 5-year extension.
It kicks in this year for it's ascending, which is
you have to believe in him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind the ascending because the cap's going to go up a lot. So, and it's not like a crazy ascension, but like, yeah, I think it's a fair deal. You would have to be a little bit worried about the defense there though, in the front court.
You would. Yeah, I think that everybody needs to step up on that end, though. I think if you got more effort from De'Aaron Fox, that he has a better defender than what he's shown. And also, if you give him a little bit less offensive responsibility with Sabonis kind of sharing that load a little bit. I really like Dante DiVincenzo and him sticking around. I think he can be the one to kind of guard primaries. But you're really betting on being a really, really good offensive team and just like getting by on the defensive end. Because a core of Fox and Sabonis is already kind of not giving you a great hand when it comes to defense. So to me, it's a Mike Brown team this next season. So they're going to give it everything they can on the defensive end. And maybe this isn't how they view the roster, but to me, you're aiming for a top 10 offense and not a bottom 10 defense.
I think that's fair. Wow. I honestly, I had not considered Collins, and just hearing you say that name now makes me wonder, like,
I think it'd be for Harrison Barnes. I think the salary, Richaun Holmes would be ideal, but like, what does Atlanta want to do with another center? Maybe there's some 3-team where he goes somewhere else. Like the Washington has 13 and 15. Is there something there? And like PJ Washington, for example, who knows? Yeah, that's the only name I can think of trading down. Like, I don't know. There was OG Anunoby talk going around today.
That was the headliner in that Jake Fisher, shout out Jake Fisher, Bleacher Report, in that article. I saw that name and I'm like, ooh, Anunoby's on the block. But then you read what these Messiah is probably going to be asking for. I'm like you wouldn't give up 4 for Anunoby, would you? I don't think I'd do that.
It's hard to. Honestly, if it was 5, I might, but 4, I don't think so.
Honestly, that's fair. In this draft, I think that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, I'll be honest with you. I'm like getting desperate trying to think of ways that Julius Randle is not on my basketball team between now and the opening of next season. And I do think that his name like will be in talks, and I could see there being talks about the 4th pick, but like for the reasons that you said, I would be very surprised if Julius Randle's a King next season. Maybe, 3-team deal, 4-team deal, something like that, which is why I think the Knicks pick, at 11 is at least, it's interesting in terms of what could that do for them. And then let me ask you this, because this is, again, something I've been bouncing around. I'm curious what you think of it. The notion of giving up a future potentially unprotected pick is something that has bitten us in the ass pretty hard in the past. And I think around the league, if the Knicks ever put a future potentially unprotected pick on the table, it would garner some serious interest in terms of what they could do. Like, how does that sound to you? Like, just forget for Randle, like the whole thing. Like, what kind of value would that have in your mind?
It's interesting. I think in Sacramento's position, I don't know. I could see them valuing it for sure. It's just like, I think they need to be able to turn it around pretty quickly into an asset that's going to contribute. In the more future, or in the more immediate, because reality of the front office having this being their final year on the contract, I think also plays into it.
You're making it very clear. Like this is win now, 100%.
I think it has to be as much as Sabonis still has 2 seasons, and seemed extremely excited and happy to be in Sacramento. I'm sure that anybody I want to say this is his 4th team and he's 25 years old, is just looking for a home. And this is the first team that's traded for the Sabonis that's established and we know what Sabonis is. The other ones, it's like, okay, if he turns out to be anything, great. And then what he eventually been developed even further into in Indiana, going from OKC. Like, this is the first team trading for what they know Sabonis is, a star, and to build around him. So I get him being excited and wanting it to be a home. Also have seen this team break people down pretty quickly. You could spend a year of it not going the way that you imagined and change your mind after the next season. So while I get it's not like immediately has to be right now, all or nothing, they did accelerate their timeline with the Tyrese move.
The only other name I just want to throw at you, because I always am fascinated to hear what people think about him. Again, I've thought of 3-team and 4-team trades involving this guy, is Ben Simmons, just because you guys were linked to Simmons was that before the deadline? Was it last summer? I don't know. Everything together.
It was right around this deadline.
Okay.
I think my understanding is Tyrese was offered for Simmons and it was told no.
And by Philly. Yeah, that's right. Do you think that they would still, I have no idea what the hell Brooklyn wants to do. Would you think they would still kick the tires there?
Maybe like Fox for Simmons, I would think would be the baseline of the deal. I don't know how Brooklyn would feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. Fox and Kyrie said something about that. Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was already talked about and shot down too.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because again, our teams kind of share similar plight. The other thing that always annoys me from a national media perspective is when the term toxic gets applied to the Knicks, as if you don't want to go there. Toxic. And that it hasn't happened over the last couple of years. There was a word that was thrown around for a long time. It always got under my skin. And reading the ESPN mock draft today from, I guess, Gavoni, and he drops the, agents may wield power because some of their clients may not want to go to Sacramento. Where do you stand on that stuff? Do you care about it? Do you think it's going to be an issue? Where are you at?
To be honest, why should they want to come to Sacramento? I think there's
an honest guest.
I think there's some guys that can, it just takes a personality to look at it and want to change a franchise around.
Like Haliburton did.
Yeah. Which Haliburton had that mindset, right? He talked about it right before they ended up trading him. I'm going to be here. I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to be here. Well, turns out that's not the case. It just takes a certain type of guy to do it. And I understand that they haven't done their guys any favors in recent years. So I understand if some agents have some bad blood or feel a type of way about sending their client to Sacramento. I also think if you're at the top and that high up in the draft, you're going to go if they pick you no matter what. I don't think that they had extensive workouts with Tyrese or with Davion Mitchell, and they still end up taking those guys, and they're going to show up and work out just fine if they're the right pick. So I don't care about it too much. I get where it comes from.
I think that's well said. Speaking of Davion, nice. He ended up making all rookie second team, right?
He barely did not.
He missed it. Okay. Cause I know there was some feisty competition for those last few spots, but he had a good year. I was, again, cause all I do is think of fake trades at this time of year. I was looking at him and Fox, do they play together? How do they play? They didn't start them together. They played them together a lot, but they didn't start them together. So again, theoretically, Ivy's on the board. He's the obvious pick. There's no trade. Is there any concern that Fox, Ivy, Mitchell, it's too many eggs in that kind of positional basket? I understand Ivy and Fox could play together, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny to replay the whole thing after we just got out of this conversation with Haliburton. Right?
That's very fair.
But I don't think that you're factoring Davion into your decision at pick 4, to be honest.
Okay.
I just don't think that he's quite that caliber of player. I feel I slander Davion all the time. I feel people are just extremely high on him. I find myself every time I'm talking about him, feel I'm talking bad on Davion, but it's not. I just view him as a really good backup point guard in the league. And until there's a lot of progress in his 3-point shooting, because right now that senior year at Baylor is looking like an outlier, shot 31% from three last year, 65% from the free throw line. He barely got there. So take that for what you will, less than 100 attempts. But like, still, I think that there's flashes of self-creation. There's like moments, there's games at the end of the year where him and Davion Jones are running a pick and roll over and over every single game. And both their numbers look phenomenal. And you're like, oh, there's like a little mini Drew Holiday going on right here. But I think that's just extremely high usage. And I think that's what makes him a good backup point guard. You can put the ball in his hands and he'll make some plays. He doesn't make phenomenal reads, but he makes the right pass. And then obviously we know what he does on the defensive end. But I still think there needs to be growth before I view him as like the long-term a starter in the NBA, really. Like if he was a complimentary 4th or 5th starting point guard, then sure. But that's not what's going to happen with De'Aaron Fox out there. So no, he's not really factoring too much into the decision to take Jaden Ivey, as long as everybody's okay with dealing with all those conversations all over again of 3 guards.
I mean, look, we're there's going to be a moment in a couple of days when, assuming Gary Payton II can get back on the court, and I hope he does. I love watching that dude play. Where as far as I'm concerned, he's going to be playing center for the Warriors, because it's like the way like things work. I'm not saying that you're going to do that with Davion Mitchell, but like, I don't know, at a certain point, if like you got good basketball players and they could do enough of the things that you need them to do, just like put them on the court together. And like you said, he could defend. So I think that's the key. He's a little small, but then again, guys can overcome that. You look at Smart, Peyton, Drew, you mentioned before. What is he? He's like 6'3". I know. What is Davion? He's like an even 6 foot, 6'1", something like that.
Yeah, I see 6'2" on Basketball Reference, but I'm not buying it. I'm going with 6 foot.
Okay. I like him. I was curious to ask about him because it feels like there's a little bit of the Randle Toppin situation that we got going on here, with the difference being that everybody there still seems to like De'Aaron Fox very much, and opinions here have soured a little bit more on Randle. And I think some folks, which I guess I would count myself among them, are a little higher on Obi Toppin. And it just feels like bringing them both back is going to be like, are they really going to do this again? So you don't think they would trade Davion just because like they're like, we can't get the most out of the asset, or at the very least, it would take someone making a big offer for them to trade him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, the thing that's talked about with Davion all the time is his work ethic, right? And you hear this with every single prospect that comes out the draft, but with Davion, it's nonstop, and it hasn't stopped since he's been drafted. Like, his work ethic is praised ridiculously. De'Aaron Fox said that he works as hard as Kobe this year. And like, Fox is not just going to drop that like it's nothing. Anytime you ask Alvin Gentry this year, like some concern about Davion Mitchell, it's like, I could care less. He works his butt off. He's going to figure it out. Yeah. So the offseason is when you see that level of growth, right? I know someone who that would be music to their ears, currently coaching the New York Knicks. Yeah, that's a good point. So I don't know, like, you have to see how it ends up working out. I also think that when it comes to like value of assets and where you have them positionally is where I start to like think about the guards a little bit. Like, I think they can all work together, but it's like, could Davion get you a really good wing when you are deprived of wings? Maybe. So I personally would consider Davion as movable, obtainable. I think it might take a pretty nice fit with a different player though coming in.
Yeah, I'm just I've thought of everything. I spent a lot of more time than I should, thinking about the Kings, and I'm just like, again, the Knicks were linked to Davion before last year's draft. Like, they clearly liked him. They clearly liked some of the attributes you just talked about, the work ethic, the whole thing. And I just wonder, would they view it as like, yeah, we're overpaying on paper for what the asset seems to be right now, but if he hits, then, maybe we don't. I don't know. Let's go. Before I let you go, I want to go back to Holmes for a minute, because our current starting center, Mitchell Robinson, it seems to like fluctuate by the day whether or not he's going to be back or not. I don't really know. They may have an opening at center, and there's not a ton of teams out there who have an obvious need for a starting five. I mean, you could go. You go Charlotte. You could. I mean, I'm sure you've thought about these teams like that. You could count them on one hand, right? Do you think they will require treat him as an asset? Like, I know you referred to him as an asset because he's a good player, but given I know he sorted out the legal troubles and those seem to be behind him, or is this a situation where you could see the Kings being let's Alec Burks. Alec Burks is a guy here we like to throw in every fake trade, even though I love Alec Burks. He's very good. But Alec Burks as a salary would kind of match.
Burks has a legendary Kings career.
Yeah.
No, it was absolutely horrible.
Wait a minute.
It was horrible.
Did I forget that Alec Burks was a member of the Kings?
I think we all forgot he was a member of the Kings.
Because I certainly have forgotten that Alec Burks was a member of the Kings.
For 13 games in 18-19.
Completely forgot. Was that the year he was traded to or from Golden State or
from
Philly?
Cleveland? He was traded from Cleveland as a part of the Shumpert deal.
Wow.
And then they brought back Alec Burks, and he only played 13 games to close out that season because he forgot how to shoot. And
he does that sometimes.
Yeah,
he does that sometimes.
Yeah. Then ended up going to Golden State year after.
And then he certainly
he signed with Golden State and then got traded to Philly.
One of those two places he shot the lights out. And then his first season here, he was awesome. And then last season he was good, and it's just that he was overused and he was played in the wrong position. But solid basketball player. I know he didn't do great for you guys, but do you think that they would move on from Holmes for just a guy, a decent guy, or do you think that they're going to want to get something real for him?
I think they probably want to get something real. I think the legal stuff is for the most part behind him. I don't know how much it'll affect his trade value. To me, it's that he had a really bad year last year also. And they don't have any leverage in this conversation. It seems like Sabonis is playing the 5, and they certainly didn't try to put Holmes alongside him outside of maybe 2 random stretches.
I was about to say, I looked that up. It's not many possessions.
No, never happened. Holmes also wasn't very healthy. Sabonis wasn't healthy to close out the season. But I don't know. You can't go into the season doing the same thing you did with Buddy and Bagley, where it's we're planning on moving this guy. We just need to showcase them for a little longer because we didn't have a deal that we liked. I just don't see a situation where Holmes fits on this roster. So they don't have great leverage, but I think he's worth what he's paid. Not far from I thought Holmes was top 10 center not long ago, and it sounds psycho, but after 7, 8, it really falls off. So I think he's at the top of a decent sized tier, but extremely efficient, great in the pick and roll. And if you get him on a switching scheme defensively, I think he fits great. I think he's a really good switch defender. It's the lack of size that doesn't make him good around the rim. I don't know. Charlotte is a team that's been linked to him a lot, and they still don't have a big. They just got to kind of try out Montrezl Harrell, which to me, Richaun Holmes is just a better Montrezl Harrell.
Better defender for sure. And honestly, I don't know, man. Holmes, it seems like I've said this on my pod. Every time you watch that guy, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 of those little baby jumpers just going in. He just never misses them. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. I wonder if the Clippers are the interesting one to me. Could you get Marcus Morris for the last year?
Do you want Marcus Morris?
I don't love his personality. I'm not going to.
He's got a personality.
I forgot about his Knicks tenure for a second there, actually.
I get 47
that half season where he got paid
15
million for the year, right?
He got 15 million. We got him because there was the whole Spurs debacle. Right. But that's Marcus Morris ended up turning into Emmanuel quickly. So we were very thankful that Marcus Morris decided to take James Dolan's money for, like I said, it's either 47 or 51 games. I'm sure Andrew will correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I don't love Morris as personality. I think he's the type of basketball player the Kings do need. 3-and-D wing. Could you get Luke Kennard off that team? I don't think so. Kennard had a big turnaround last year.
Yeah.
Dallas. Would you do Tim Hardaway Jr.? Another name.
Man, you're just going after
this is unintentional.
All the old Can we interest you in a lightly used Kristaps Porzingis while we're at it?
Maybe.
Listen,
he's Chet Holmgren.
Take my word for it. You don't want to go down that way. It's not.
We'll take your word. Yeah.
It's not the path to success.
So I don't think that Burks is quite enough. I don't think that they're dumping Richaun Holmes. I think there's okay value to be found somewhere.
All right. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see what you guys do. I feel like I feel like the draft is going to start at, I don't know what order the big three are going to go. If you had to bet on it right now, what would you go? Smith, Chet, Paolo?
And then Paolo. Yeah.
And then Paolo. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big Chet guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like whispers, which take for what you will, of OKC really liking Ivy and Sacramento swapping with that. And I mean, I would trade the future first to OKC.
So Sam Presti, well, I respect this GM. Some people trash him. I like what he's done. I think, or I at least respect it, especially since they seem to unearth like good basketball players as well. And then they sit them on the sideline because they win too many games. They beat us twice this year. That was fun.
I think we had an epic collapse against that team that Fox got swiped at the end of the game. Yeah.
Okay. So Presti, he convinces the Kings that he's going to take he convinces the Kings he's going to take Chet, and then you guys give up the future first to move up to 2.
Yeah.
You'd do that?
I would. Yeah. I think Chet or Jabari, either one is there, are both like ideal fits next to Sabonis. They both can shoot. They both play really stellar defense for a 4, can impact the rim on defense as well. And the upside's there to go even further. I see both of them as like elite role players, which isn't a shade. Like I would call Draymond Green an elite role player.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
There's guys that are all-stars that are elite role players. I still think that's the ceiling. I don't see them as like primary guys offensively that are running your offense or anything, but I think like they're the perfect complementary. And that's probably selling them short pieces to Sabonis.
Well, Brenden, I will be honest with you. 2, or rather 4 and a future first for 2 is a trade that I would make if I were the Kings before I traded 4 and Harrison Barnes for Julius Randle, 11, and a future first.
It's close though. It's so close.
Just like Julius Randle was so close on so many of those jumpers. Just a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, would have gone right in. Do you have
any favorites at 11?
Do I have any favorites at 11? I'm like midway through my deep dives on these guys, and I will say that I'm not in love with any of them. Like, I like the Daniels kid, Dyson Daniels. I like Dyson Daniels a lot. I think Dyson Daniels is going to be like, that dude is going to help teams win basketball games, no matter what team he's on. Just put him out there. He's going to figure out a way to help teams win for a very long time.
He's a big, long defender who can't shoot. He's got Tibbs written all over.
No, he's like a supersized Alfred Payton. Just
true.
It just drives a dream in a face. A much
supersized Alfred Payton. Love it.
A much better defending, better pass. Here's the thing with Daniels. His passing is like legit. I think the passing has a chance to be, I don't know about special, but like I'm very high on his passing, and I think he seems like a great character kid from everything you read. But he's gonna be gone, so that sucks. Mathurin, I'm starting to talk myself into, but now it seems like he's gonna be gone too. Because at least again, that's a dude with like, it's movement shooting. If that's the only significant translatable skill that like really, and he also like the cutting, I think will be a thing, although that's a team specific. Like, can you make the most use out of his? And I like the other thing about Mathurin is he's tough. Like I was looking like whatever it is, like 6 and 6.5 or whatever it is, rebounds per 36 minutes. Like that's nothing to scoff at. That's a legitimate plus for a guy who's probably gonna be a shooting guard at the next level. Yeah, I don't know. Why? Do you have any thoughts on the bottom half of the draft? Anybody that pops?
Not particularly. Like Johnny Davis seems very Knicksy to me.
I did a whole freaking newsletter on him today, and I'm just like, is this guy really gonna get the ball at the next level enough to take a dozen off the dribble mid range,
right?
18 foot. Like
it's one of those tough. Like he makes tough shots, but yeah, I mean, create some easy ones every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's it. Like him, the kid from Ohio State, Branham. Like same kind of deal. Like it's all from the mid range. He's more efficient there, but I don't know. It was part of the reason I wanted to have you on. Is I really do think that they're going to make an effort to trade this pick. I think they're going to make an effort to trade up first. And if they can't trade it up, I think they'll make an effort to trade it down for significant value. I think they'd love to get the 4. For the reasons we talked about, I don't think they're getting a 4. And then it's a matter of like, okay, do they get the 7? Is there a 3-team trade where it's like 4, 7, and 11 or swap it around? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
What are you kind of seeing as the primary assets for moving up?
So again, that's why I love to talk to people about Julius Randle, because like in theory, big air quote energy here. In theory, Julius Randle is like an asset that some other team could want to have. And yet I just have very little faith that even teams that are in, and again, I don't want to paint you guys as like, oh, it's the Kings. They'll take talent any way they could get it.
They painted themselves that way.
So like not a major free agent destination, right? Like a team like the Kings, like Portland, maybe a little bit less. So like these teams that are trying to win the whole thing. Like, are these the types of teams that could talk themselves into a Julius Randle? And I just don't know the answer to that question. So aside from him, I mean, you have your young players, and I just, I don't know. Rightly so. I don't think the Knicks want to get rid of them. Like the better ones, at least. The only question mark there is Obi Toppin, who is a guy that if the Knicks traded him, there would be, pitchforks and
really.
Oh God, and torches lit outside of MSG. Yeah. Cause he really came on in the later part of the year. And that's why it's funny. You were talking about John Collins, and I wasn't going to say it out loud, but now that you brought it up, it's like that's a trade construction. I think that would make some, I'm not saying for 4, but like you guys got Davion Mitchell, who's a backup to a guy who's playing 36 minutes a night. Obi Toppin is a backup to a guy who's playing 36 minutes a night. Showed some promise, showed some potential. There's a big question mark, the 3-point shot, right? Can he play small ball 5? Does he protect the rim enough? Like, I'm not saying that it makes sense to trade I don't even know who would say no to that. The Knicks probably say no to that trade, I think. Obi for Davion straight up. Because I think they see Obi as a starter who just can't start right now because of Julius.
Yeah, that's interesting. I almost think both sides could say no.
I could see it. Maybe like you said, Davion, the big work ethic guy, like maybe if he comes back and the jumper starts falling, then like,
right.
Yeah. But you could also say the same thing about, I'm really high on Obi Toppin. Like, I don't want to trade Obi Toppin, but you talk about trade assets, like he's technically a trade asset.
In Thibodeau's eyes.
What do you think of Tom Thibodeau? Let me get in with Tibbs. You brought him up a couple times. What do you think of Tibbs? What's the Sacramento opinion on Tom Thibodeau?
I like Thibodeau. I mean, I think that I have a friend that's a really big Jimmy Butler fan.
Okay.
It's my best friend. So he's kind of followed Jimmy Butler's career everywhere. And therefore, I really watched closely the Minnesota Tibbs era. And I really liked their turnaround. Like, I think you saw Tibbs kind of bring in all of his guys, but the way that that team bought in defensively, and a lot of it had to do with Jimmy and kind of his effect on that culture. But like, I think Tibbs has shown a track record of making a good defense out of rosters that maybe don't have the talent that you would typically expect to perform that well defensively. So I'll give him a little bit of leeway on some of his unique other ways that he likes to go about coaching. I don't have too many issues when he's getting that sort of production on defense.
Here it was just the rotation. That was really it. That was where all the criticism. And let me rephrase that: the rotation and basically letting Julius Randle have carte blanche to do, whatever the hell he wanted this year, without any apparent accountability.
You know how you enjoyed the Jimmy Butler era in Minnesota? Well, Tibbs treated Julius Randle as if he had the credibility of a Jimmy Butler.
It's actually not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Tibbs guy, and I'll say that.
It's why, I don't know if you were intentionally making a face when you saw that John was high on Obi Toppin, or if you've ever heard that Knicks fans are high on Obi Toppin, it's because you cannot go by what you've seen from Obi Toppin in box scores or in a Tom Thibodeau rotation, because he's just
nothing
said to go in the corner, and it's impossible then to get a real evaluation, which is last like 4 or 5 games, John. That's when they finally shut down Randle.
Well, yes, but more than that, if you go, Toppin started getting a little bit more time really over the last, I think it was like 15 games. If you go his minutes per game, not all universally, but like his last 15 games, he was like a 42% shooter from 3 on, again, the volume wasn't like uniform. There was a game, I think he shot like 15 threes or some insane thing at the end of the year, but like he was 42% from 3. So we're, it's one of those things like, what do teams around the league see when they look at Obi Toppin? Do they see a guy who's like a not a star in the making, but a guy who could come in the right situation, really be a weapon on offense? Or I don't know.
Yeah. My view from however many thousand miles away was, I thought that if Obi Toppin were going to be something impressive, that we would have seen it pretty early in his career. So
that's fair.
Skeptical.
And I think the response is that, how can you see it in 7 minutes hiding in the corner when Julius Randle is playing the other 41 a night?
Right. And I think it would go back to, if he was good enough, he'd be out there.
I think here's the tricky part,
ahead, John.
If we're going to get really into the nitty gritty of this, he played, what was it, 21 or 22 minutes, his first NBA, or maybe it was more, it was like 23 minutes, his first NBA game. And then he got hurt. I don't think he got hurt in the game, but he got hurt before like game 2. And then he missed, it was like 2 weeks. And then by the time Toppin came back, Julius Randle was like already starting the All-Star campaign. Very, very, very little seedlings of it. And then the other part of it is that, and shout out to Fred Katz, beat reporter for the Knicks for The Athletic, who comes on this pod and has repeated this several times. Rim protection is Tom Thibodeau's religion. Like, he's just not going to put a center out there that can't protect the rim. So, you add it all up, and as Andrew said, it's 7 minutes in the corner.
Yeah. Unless Julius Randle is down, then it's 41 minutes and 42 points, which, turns out Obi Toppin might be better than we think.
We shall see. We hope it's in a Knicks uniform. We'll end with this. Prediction, gun to your head right now. Kings keep the pick, or they trade it for something?
They trade it.
You see, wow, that didn't take long. Okay.
No, yeah, feel pretty good about it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they trade it. I have a tough time seeing Sharp, and maybe Ivy's the guy. I think they trade it, and especially if I'm allowed to consider trading up as a possibility, along with trading to someone else, and just generally say trade it, I'm easily going with that option.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope for your sake, Julius Randle's not wearing it.
I hope the same for your sake with the Knicks.
I don't know. What are we getting someone from Portland on, Andrew? Maybe we could
try the next one.
We have a long list of Blue Wire content creators that were
Julius Randle, anyone?
Yes, it's literally Julius Randle, anyone.
28 teams left to go.
Yes.
World champion Warriors. I know Andrew Wiggins is, I shouldn't say that. The Celtics could win.
Lithuania. Do you have any interest
Shanghai?
Yeah.
Listen.
Team Canada. Yeah.
Who was it that was like, was still a legitimate NBA player during the lockout and went and played? Was it J? I think it was JR, right?
It was either JR or Kenyon Martin. Both of them play overseas and then came back and came to the Knicks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you never know. Maybe we just need a lockout, and then he falls in love with China so much that he doesn't want to come back. That's it. We've solved the Julius Randle problem. Great job, bud. 3 of us. Brenden, tell the folks at home where they could find you and your stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Kings Film School Podcast, also part of Blue Wire, and then also doing the Kings Beat podcast now with a couple of great guys that cover the team, and then any sort of writing for the Kings Herald. I got my Chet Holmgren profile coming out here soon, if you guys want to dream about what that would be like. And I think that's everything. So I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. You got me thinking about now, Chet, on the Kings.
I love it.
It's interesting. It really is interesting.
Yeah, and it's easy to see when you're watching Gonzaga tape. It's just Drew Timme is Domantas Sabonis.
And Sabonis went to Gonzaga, right?
He did.
Yeah,
He did.
right.
Wow, I didn't think about that in this whole time, but yeah, he did.
It's why they paid me the big bucks.
Yeah.